a look at some of your responses later on in this newscast. Well, still looking at developments coming out of Chankwanzi, I'm joined in the studio by Mr. Godbert Tumshebe, who is a policy analyst, but he is also the Associate Director of Great Lakes Institute for Strategic Studies, GLIS. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
You've been watching that story. Yeah. Was smiling at a certain point. What do you make of this proposal to change the system?
And I think, first of all, it is the way the media buys into the narrative. And your story is about President Museveni accepts to be nominated as a sole candidate. But if you follow the events since 2017, you actually see that President Museveni masterminded the amendment of the constitution to come back as a candidate, and therefore there is nothing really like accepting. So what you are seeing at Chankwanzi is a continuation of the conspiracy between the president and the NRM MPs to be able to bring back President Museveni for an unconstitutional term. So really there is nothing like accepting, because he has masterminded all this all through.
So what is new is the proposal to change the system?
It's actually not new, because you see, from 1996, actually 1997, the Constitution, the first amendment to the Constitution was in 1996, when Parliament voted and passed a resolution to change the number of cabinet ministers. That was the first amendment to the Constitution. It was done because President Museveni needed it. The second amendment is 2005 to remove age limit. It was done because it was necessary for President Museveni to contest. The third amendment comes in 2017 to remove age limit. It is done because President Museveni needs it. So, in other words, even if it was actually constitutionally and politically necessary to change the system of choosing a president, the mere fact that every time we have had a constitutional amendment is done because President Museveni needs it, makes this absolutely
illegitimate. A clear mastermind. But you had Mhanga there saying that he would be surprised by all of these things and he might even turn it down.
No, I think...
and that's why you smiled.
No, Margaret is...
What does it mean for the opposition?
Of all the people that you want to be speaking, I don't think that Margaret Mhanga is one of them. I don't want to be...
What does this mean for the opposition? Look at the numbers that FDC has, about 36 seats. DP has about 14. UPC has 6. What does it mean for people like Besigye, Mugisha, Muntu?
No, again, it's the media and NRM narrative that the opposition. Because you see, there is no opposition in this country. What you have are political groups, because you have one group called NRM that constitutes the state of Uganda.
So everybody else
is trying to oppose the state of Uganda, and that's not the kind of democracy that is envisaged under the 1995 Constitution. So the moment you say opposition in the current political context, where the ruling government is actually the state, not a political party called NRM, that concept is completely flat. And I'm always surprised that politicians who are not NRM, they actually convince themselves that they are opposition. Because I think what you have now is a state capture by a group of people that call themselves NRM. And I think what Ugandans need to be doing is to actually fight tooth and nail to regain the state of Uganda from this kind of capture.
Well, let me take you back to what we really wanted to talk about today, which is the proposal to change the system. Do you think that ordinary citizens have a say at any point in all of this? Do you think that this is something that would call for a referendum? A change like this to be made?
No, because you see, this would only, even a referendum would only be relevant if you have a leadership that is genuine, that is honest, that actually follows the rule of law. In the current circumstances, the NRM leadership is really more or less like a conspiracy. I think that you have a president and members of parliament from the NRM group who have decided to conspire against the country called Uganda and against Ugandans. So whether you think of referendum or not,
it doesn't really help.
It doesn't matter, because you also remember that during the proposal to amend the constitution to remove age limit, You saw how the police and the military were used to actually stop any possibility of anybody talking against the removal of age limit. Yeah.
All right, so I have two questions for you, and very quickly, because our time is fast spent. Number one, how do you think the other parties will compete with this kind of system, considering the numbers that the NRM already has in Parliament, over 300, compared to about the 50-something that the others brought together have? But then the other question is, what do you think is the wide-reaching impact of this? Life presidency?
Yeah, first of all, the other parties, you need to talk about them not in terms of political parties. You need to talk about them in terms of Ugandans. That Ugandans have a civic and constitutional responsibility under Article 4 to fight to protect the constitution and actually liberate it from the capture that NRM has subjected it to. So any fight between now and in the future must be a fight between Ugandans and this group that has captured the state, because Ugandans are basically hostages being run almost to the ground by this state capture. What you are seeing in terms of the changes that have been perpetuated since 1996 is actually changes that basically perpetuated dictatorship, and this is what happens in every dictatorship. The dictator basically captures the state institutions and uses those institutions to perpetuate himself or herself in power, and therefore this is exactly what you are seeing here in Uganda. Like you said at the beginning, a mastermind. Yeah, it's a conspiracy. So if you could say it for me in one line, what does what would this imply? What would the future look like for a presidency? No, basically you have a president who has all the resources at his disposal, who can buy everybody, and therefore you are looking at a life presidency. Okay, yes. Said it. Thank you so much, Mr. Godbert, for taking the time to speak with us. Unfortunately, we really have very limited time for that. Now, let's move on. For the second time, the NRM Parliamentary Caucus has endorsed its